And then we have to be very clear about remaining there. There's nothing here. There is the deluded state which has been dispelled. And then the true path to enlightenment opens up, because then the deeper meditations can be done, and we can learn gradually, step by step, to let go of all the many states of deluded belief. And there are 10 steps. I won't go into that now, though. 10 steps. Okay, so insight is self-arising, and it affects our lives, it transforms our lives if we are able to recognize it and then allow it to take its place. A lot of people have not yet learned how to recognize insight. And that is why Heather and Choden have constructed the course the way they have, because it leads you steadily on the path to recognition. Insight is probably the most important ground for psychological growth, and interestingly, for the development of intelligence. Psychologists don't say a lot about how you can develop intelligence. It's assumed that you come in at a level of whatever intelligence you have, and that's going to be the maximum. You can't improve upon it. But actually with insight, your intelligence is increased because you see things at greater and greater depths, and you see through delusion, you see through self-delusion. And that is what enables intelligence to grow in the mind. So you train in insight, and then if you dare, you will experience an increase in intelligence. And that is not always comfortable, because as your intelligence grows, you see more and more of the negative mind patterns that most of us have lurking. They may not be obvious and upfront, but they are lurking in the deeper layers of the mind. And those are the ones that are most important to expose and become free from. So it's the exposing, the recognition, and the becoming free. Finally, we can do exercises to develop insight by developing mindfulness. The way we do this is this. We sit and focus being mindful, and then as you are being mindful, notice how thoughts appear. You've all done that, haven't you? Thoughts appear in your mind, and then see how quickly the mind goes toward the thought. Mostly, as if you're a beginner, the mind will have engaged the thought before you realize it. Have some of you noticed that? So you're meditating and you're doing very well, and suddenly you realize you're down the road shopping in the corner shop. And you know exactly what you bought. You've bought cigarettes because you gave them up last week. And you probably bought a bottle of brandy. And you're going to have yourself a great time. Now, that's what we call a distraction from meditation. You will slightly have distracted yourself, so you come back. And slowly, by coming back over and over again, you begin to see from another angle what the mind does. The mind starts actually revealing for itself. And that is why the phrases like self-revealing, self-arising are used in meditation language, because those factors do arise by themselves. So it's quite a relief when you know that, because it lets you off the hook of always having to make it happen. You don't make insight happen. You train in mindfulness, and then you learn to allow the appearance of thought. You allow the tendency of the mind to engage, but you don't follow through. So thought appears, mind wants to engage, but you don't follow through. Now, in the beginning, those of you who've done this will realize it feels as though there's a job undone. You've only half done the job, because the mind carries a very strong conviction that if a thought appears, I must engage it and I must start thinking. But now you're breaking that habit. Thought appears, tendency to engage arises, and you don't. And it all feels wrong. So let's try that. Okay, sit comfortably with your back reasonably straight. If you're used to using breath as your mindfulness support, focus on your breath. If you're used to using sound as the mindfulness support, you can focus on sound. So just let your mind rest with the support, making sure you're not grasping or fighting to hold on to it. So you allow a sense of resting. Then you notice thoughts appear. See if you can notice the tendency to engage. It's all very, very fast, so you have to be quite alert. Rest your mind again on your support. Witness thoughts appearing. See how it feels when you've engaged a thought and you realize that and turn your attention back to the mind support. See what feeling arises in the mind. You're resting, focused on the support. Mind drifts. See if you can spot the tendency to engage and see how powerful it is. How powerfully it overrides your intention to remain focused on the support. When the gong went, where were you? Thinking. Had you thought enough to have left the support behind?
Towards the end I had.
Yes?
Started off with my support was sound, and I followed sounds, if that's the right word.
Correct.
As they arose, and my first thought was, I'm thinking.
So you saw thought arise and your first thought was, I'm thinking.
And then you gave the instruction to start again.
Yeah.
And I went back to my support, and you gave the instruction to start again, because the bell rang. And my next thought was, am I thinking?
So your next thought was, am I thinking?
My next thought was, for heaven's sake, why can't I stop thinking about thinking?
For heaven's sake, why can't I stop thinking about thinking? And did heaven give you an answer?
No, it was just getting stronger and stronger. I could see I was becoming more fixed on this notion of thinking.
Yes.
On the thought about thinking.
Were you thinking that you weren't supposed to be thinking?
Yes, because that was the aim of it.
Oh, no. We didn't have an aim.
Oh, no, we didn't, did we?
But this is interesting because the mind very quickly introduces authority or striving. And our mindfulness training is to be very relaxed and open, with an intention, but without a striving, without a good or bad or right or wrong. But thank you for sharing. That was very useful and very helpful, and I'm sure a lot of people had exactly your experience. Yeah. How's about the rest of you? Sometimes difficult to know whether you're thinking or not. Yeah.
Turns out you've lost the support. So you are thinking.
Yeah.
But you didn't, it's so subtle you didn't even notice it.
Right. It takes a while to be able to recognize it because thought appears very subtly in the mind. And very often we've engaged the thought and are in a full-fledged thinking cycle before we realize it. So these little exercises are valuable. We can break through and see, yes, that's where I started thinking. That's where the thought appeared. Did anybody see the moment a thought appeared in their minds? Even now, as you're sitting there, can you see the thoughts appearing in your mind? Where do they come from?
My thought came from, sorry, I should let someone else talk.
Your thoughts came from? I didn't hear you.
This is blaming thing. It's not meant as a blame, but I think it was partly the training in mindfulness to recognize a thought and say thinking. So I think it was some kind of memory of a meditation
Right.
Slow me down. I couldn't tell you what that thought was beyond that I'd got to the stage of saying thinking.
Right. So you were saying to yourself, thinking.
I more and more often experience thoughts to be the same as my dreams.
Uh-huh.
It makes me wonder if I dream my thinking or my thoughts.
Do you stay awake?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it seems to be coming from a different space.
Good. So where do your thoughts come from?
Subconscious level.
I mean, do you experience them coming from somewhere in your body or around you?
They fade in.
So they just come in.
Yeah.
Good.
And at one point I noticed them.
And your dreams?
The same. Because I tend to have a lot of dream images when I'm sitting in meditations, and it mixed together with thinking. So it makes me wonder.
In a dream, you're usually in it. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
When you're dreaming, you're participating in the dream. Whereas in meditation, you're more like a witness.
Yeah.
Because we talk about the observer and the undercurrent. So the observer is witnessing the flow of the undercurrent. So there's definitely a separation. I think that's the big difference between meditation and dream. And of course the other one is, with dream you have gone to sleep, so your conscious rational mind has gone to sleep. Whereas in meditation it doesn't. It becomes quiescent, but it doesn't go to sleep.
What I mean is that when I'm sitting, I sit for a while, and when I'm tired, then it's just like Netflix. So I'm present and I'm watching all kinds of images, movies passing by. That's what I mean.
Good.
And it's
And you're wide awake.
alert, and then comes a thought, seems to fade in the same way and pass away.
Excellent.